Hello, this is Chapter 8, video number 4. For this video, this is the last one for Chapter 8. I wanted to go over an example question on how we can use a sampling distribution of a proportion, how we can use that. So let's go ahead and get to it. So this question states, the school board claims that 85% of families in their district send their children to public school. Skeptical of this claim, a private school administrator takes a sample of 120 families with children in the district and asks those families whether they send their children to public school. What is the probability that the administrator's results are within 5 percentage points of the school board's 85% claim? All right, so here's what we have in this problem. We have a proportion that we are expecting. We are expecting 85% of this sample to send their kids to private school. And I want to know, what is the probability that this is within 5 percentage points? So let's say that the administrator finds out, oh, hey, actually only 82% of families send theirs to public school. Well, is that big of a deal or not? So let's go ahead and create this. So we are expecting this distribution to be centered at what the school board claims. We're expecting this to be centered at 85%. All right, and if I want to know what is the probability that this falls within 5 percentage points, what I'm looking for is hey, what's the probability that we are between, well, 5 percentage points lower than this would be at 80%. 5 percentage points above this would be 90%. And I would like to know, what is the probability that we fall in here somewhere. I'll go ahead and highlight. We're looking for the probability that this administrator's results are going to fall somewhere in this region. All right, now we need one more piece of information before we can actually make this calculation, and that is we need the standard deviation of this sampling distribution. All right, so do not forget, our formula for our standard deviation is the square root of PQ over N, where P is our probability of success, Q is our probability of failure, and then finally N is our sample size. So in this problem, here we go. 85% of people should send their kids to public school. If 85% of people send their kids to public school, that means that 15% do not. They either send them to private school or homeschool them. And then finally, our sample size here, how many people did this administrator ask? Well, this administrator ended up asking 120 families. So this will be divided by 120. All right, and if I were to calculate this standard deviation, square root of 0.85 times 0.15 divided by 120. I have a standard deviation of 0.0326-ish. So this standard deviation ends up being 0.03, and what did I say, 26? Yeah, 26-ish. 326. All right, now we have plenty of information to be able to calculate this probability here. We're going to go ahead and assume that this is approximately normal. He sampled 120 families. That is enough to assume that we are approximately normal here. So looking at this, square root of PQN, we found out our standard deviation. Let's go ahead and use our normal model to figure this out. All right, so we have a normal distribution here. We are expecting a mean of 0.85, and I also said our standard deviation was 0.02326. 326. And just as a heads up, you can actually type in this calculation right here. If you didn't want to spend the time to do that, you could type in that calculation right here. It would work just the same. All right, and I'm looking for the cumulative probability. I want to know, what's the probability that this falls within 80% and 90%. And sure enough, this comes out to be a 0.875 chance. So overall, this probability here ends up being 0.875. So assuming that the school district's numbers are correct, When he goes out to take a sample, about 88% of the time he should get a number somewhere in here. Now, that doesn't mean that he couldn't sample and get something that's outside of this. That certainly is possible, but we're saying that for the most part, he has about an 88% chance of falling somewhere in between 80% and 90%. So that is not that unusual to have between those two numbers. All right, so for your homework, you have one more. This is your last homework of chapter 8. You'll have a few example problems on here. As always, please let me know if you have any questions, but all of these problems will be set up in some manner. You'll have a proportion that you are expecting. You'll have to calculate the standard deviation, and then it's going to ask you for a probability that we're either between two percentages, possibly greater than a percent or lower than a percent, and then we can adjust from there. Have a good day.